Hi, welcome to the course on AI/ML search with OpenSearch. In the Getting Started section, we have gone through the folder structure, we have understood the datasets, the projects, and some of the gotchas that we will have to keep in mind, if I might say, a contextual background that you would have to assume as we dig and delve deeper into the courses. This section is all about installation, configuration, and other requirements as we get our environment ready to execute further projects and understand the capabilities and features of OpenSearch. This will be a demo driven, so bear with me for a few slides until we get through the theory and spend a good amount of time on installation, and I'll walk you through every step as we set up our environment. I've intentionally left the introduction to OpenSearch for the next section because I wanted to get into the demo first and keep it exciting. OpenSearch and OpenSearch dashboards are available on any compatible host that supports Docker, such as could be a Linux, macOS, or Windows. Now, additionally, you can install both the products on various Linux distributions and on Windows. As you can see, those are some of the options and the hyperlinks for each of the options. Let's talk briefly about the various installation methods. You can do a package manager installation. For example, you could utilize package managers like apt on Debian based operating systems, or yum or DNF in the recent Red Hat based operating systems. You could do a container deployment, which is Docker. We will be using container deployment throughout this course because that makes it transferable and keeps it flexible enough for you to execute on any operating system. We could also do a manual installation. This is for more advanced users. I would say this is for large enterprises who want to control every aspect of OpenSearch install. Oh, let me also mention, obviously, since containers are supported, Kubernetes is the most popular way to install this in a very large grade environment. Now, what are some of the file system and Java requirements? So OpenSearch does require a file system that supports high I/O operations, such as file systems with ext4 or XFS. Note that we would have to avoid using network file system for node storage in a production workflow, as that could affect negatively on some of the key measures like performance, throughput, and so on. It is also recommended to use solid-state drives for node storage. Java is required for OpenSearch to work, and it is recommended to use Java 11 or higher. Of course, OpenSearch ships Adaptium JDK, which is a non-Oracle version that can also be used for the install. Note, we will have to set the OpenSearch Java Home or Java Home variable if we want to use a different Java installation. Some of the network requirements are as on the screen. I'll skip going through all of the details because we will not go through all of these implementing during our course. Suffice to note that network is a very key configuration aspect while maintaining an OpenSearch cluster because it is a distributed system end of the day. It is recommended to set the max map count because OpenSearch uses memory maps as it swaps and creates indices and moves data between RAM and secondary storage. It is recommended to set the VM max map count, and we will be using the same setting in our virtual machine. You can see the command. You can either make it persistent by setting it in the sysctl.conf, or you can temporarily set it in the current shell window. Now there are many other important settings, and those links are provided there. The course environment we have already walked through in the getting started, but this is going to be a snapshot of our course environment. An illustration of how we will be using the environment all through this course. On the right side, we'll have our server, which is the OpenSearch server components, including OpenSearch, dashboards, data prepper, and so on. We'll be using a Docker Compose file to spin up all of the infrastructure, and that would sit inside a virtual machine, either on a cloud or on your local Wi-Fi. For our graphical user interface, we'll be using any machine that supports Mac, Windows, or Linux, and we'll be using Visual Studio Code to connect to the server, and that Visual Studio Code will be our lens through which we will see all of the executions. Configuration. There are two main types of OpenSearch settings. Some are dynamic and some are static, which essentially means that some take effect as soon as you change them, either in the environment or in the corresponding config files. Some are static, which means that you would have to restart the OpenSearch service or server, and they will take effect only after a time. Now, there are a whole lot of settings that apply to various scenarios, and this falls into the sysops domain, which we will not be covering during this course. We will cover the important settings as needed to demonstrate the use case. So don't worry, we will cover the most important ones. So how do you specify the settings? There are multiple ways. You can specify it at startup time. If you're using Docker, you could use Docker environment variables. And all of these are also, all the settings are exposed as APIs. So you could use an external client and call into the cluster API to set those. Again, we will mention each of these as needed during the course. One thing I would like to highlight is that there are three categories for setting the cluster variables. You have persistent, you have transient, and you have default. Okay, let's talk quickly about upgrading OpenSearch. So there is a map that you would have to follow as you upgrade OpenSearch. There are rolling upgrades and there are restart upgrades. Compatibility is based on the Lucene index versions, and the table is demonstrated there. OpenSearch plugins. There are a bunch of plugins that we want to talk about, and these plugins are extensions into various other capabilities that OpenSearch provides. Let's go through each of these plugins in the next slide.